I inherited our family home when Mom passed away 2 years ago. Dad moved back in after his divorce, and I was happy to help him get back on his feet. Then he brought home Jessica, his new fiancée, without any real discussion. I tried to be supportive for his sake, though something felt off about her from the start. Everything changed when they announced her pregnancy. Before I tell you how this woman tried to kick me out of my own house, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to deal with entitled people barging into your life. Being a 32-year-old IT consultant has its perks. I can work remotely from anywhere, which is why I chose to stay in our family home after Mom died. The 3-bedroom house in suburban Pennsylvania holds so many memories. The backyard where Dad taught me to throw a baseball. The kitchen where Mom baked cookies every Sunday. The living room where we gathered for movie nights. I could not imagine selling it, which is why I was grateful when Mom left it to me, in her will officially putting the deed in my name. When Dad and my stepmother Elaine finalized their divorce 8 months ago, he was a wreck, financially drained from the settlement, and emotionally broken from the betrayal. He needed somewhere to land. I invited him to move back into his old home without hesitation. The house felt too empty with just me anyway, and I figured having Dad around would be good for both of us. For the first few months, we settled into a comfortable routine. Dad Thomas, according to his birth certificate, but always just Dad to me, would leave early for his construction management job. I would work from my home office, and in the evenings we would catch up over dinner. Sometimes we would watch sports together or work on small home improvement projects. It was healing for both of us after losing Mom. Then Jessica entered the picture. Dad mentioned meeting someone at his gym, but I had no idea how serious it was until he asked me to join them for dinner at Maggiano's one Friday night. I still remember how she looked walking into the restaurant 5 minutes late, apologizing with a bright smile. Slender build, blonde hair, cut in a stylish bob workout, toned arms, and a laugh that turned heads. At 25, she was closer to my age than to his 58 years, but Dad looked happier than I had seen him in years. Jessica talked about her work as a yoga instructor at an upscale studio, her passion for clean eating, and her dreams of opening her own wellness center someday. She seemed sweet, attentive to Dad, asking all the right questions. But something in her eyes when Dad went to the restroom gave me pause. A calculating look as she asked about our living situation. I brushed it off as normal curiosity. 3 months of dating. That was all it took before Dad came home one evening practically floating. He announced that he and Jessica were engaged, showing me a diamond ring that must have cost at least 2 months of his salary. I congratulated him, of course, though I worried it was too soon after his divorce. Then came the real bombshell. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly as we sat in the living room that evening. Broderick, Jessica's lease is ending next month and, well, since we are going to be married anyway, I was hoping she could move in with us. The word "us" caught me off guard. This was technically my house now, though I never made a point of reminding Dad of that fact. I hesitated, thinking of all the ways my comfortable living arrangement would change with a third person, especially someone I barely knew. I know it is a big ask, son. Dad continued, misreading my silence, but it would help us save for the wedding, and you would get to know each other better. Looking at his hopeful expression, I could not bring myself to say no. Sure, Dad. If it makes you happy. Jessica moved in the following weekend, bringing with her more possessions than I thought possible for someone coming from a 1-bedroom apartment. Within days, the kitchen cabinets were reorganized with her organic ingredients and expensive superfoods. The bathroom counter space became cluttered with her extensive skincare collection. Her early morning yoga routines in the living room became my unintended alarm clock. I tried to be accommodating, reminding myself this was temporary adjustment period. But when I overheard her on the phone in the backyard one evening, her sweet voice transformed into something harsh and calculating as she spoke to someone named Tiffany. I felt that initial uneasiness return. "Trust me, Tiff," she said with a laugh, "nothing like the one she used around Dad. This is the easiest setup I have ever landed. The old man is completely smitten, and his son is such a pushover. You should see this house." I stepped back inside before she could spot me, wondering if I should tell Dad what I had heard. But how could I without seeming jealous or unwelcoming? I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just tough talk to impress a friend. People present themselves differently sometimes, right? That was my first mistake. 2 months of living with Jessica turned our once peaceful home into a minefield of tension. What began as small annoyances evolved into daily conflicts that had me questioning my sanity. Her complaints became a constant soundtrack to our household. My typing was too loud during her meditation time. The smell of my coffee bothered her in the mornings, and my occasional late-night gaming sessions were disrupting her beauty, sleep. The common areas of the house gradually transformed into Jessica's personal space. The living room was now her studio, where she hosted private yoga sessions with clients, meaning I had to make myself scarce for hours at a time. The dining room table became her office, perpetually covered with her wellness business plans and vision boards. Even the backyard patio had been rearranged with her plants and meditation cushions, the furniture my mother had chosen pushed aside to make room for her aesthetic. Whenever I tried to discuss these changes with Dad, he would run interference with excuses. "She is just trying to make this place feel like home too, Broderick," he would say with that worried look. "Give her time to adjust. Marriage is about compromise." But I was the only one compromising. Dad was working longer hours to save for their wedding, leaving me alone with Jessica more often than not. With each passing day, the divide between how she acted around him versus with me grew wider. To Dad, she was affectionate and considerate. To me, when no witnesses were present, she was dismissive and territorial. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Dad had texted me to make sure I would be home, saying they had important news to share. I arrived to find Jessica cooking something with quinoa and kale, humming to herself, while Dad set the table with our best dishes and even lit candles. "We wanted to celebrate with you," Dad announced once we were seated, reaching for Jessica's hand across the table. His face glowed with excitement. "We are having a baby." My fork froze midway to my mouth as Jessica beamed her free hand, moving to rest on her still flat stomach. 8 weeks along, she added. "We were not planning on it happening so soon, but when life gives you blessings, you embrace them." Dad looked so genuinely happy that I forced myself to smile and offer congratulations. Inside, my mind raced with implications. A baby would cement Jessica's position in our lives permanently. The timing seemed suspiciously convenient, just as Dad was showing signs of financial recovery. From that evening forward, Jessica dropped all pretenses of civility when Dad was absent. Her hostility toward me became overt, no longer hidden behind fake smiles or passive-aggressive comments. "This house really is not set up for a baby," she remarked one morning while I made breakfast. "So many hazards, so much wasted space." Her eyes lingered meaningfully on my bedroom door as she said it. Small incidents escalated. My leftovers disappeared from the refrigerator. "Pregnancy brain," she claimed with a shrug when I mentioned it. A framed photo of my mother and me went missing, only to be found later in a storage box, the glass cracked. "I was just decluttering," she explained to Dad, who accepted the excuse without question. Her friends, mainly other yoga instructors and wellness influencers, began treating our home like a communal space, arriving unannounced for pregnancy support circles and staying late into the evening. They would raid the kitchen, leave messes in the living room, and talk loudly about their holistic birth plans while I tried to work. I began documenting everything in a private journal, feeling like I needed evidence that I was not imagining things. Living in my own home had become walking on eggshells, and the tension was affecting my work performance. I started spending more time at local coffee shops just to escape the toxic atmosphere. Dad, meanwhile, had taken on weekend shifts and was exploring a promotion opportunity that would require more travel but offer better pay. "For the baby," he explained tiredly one evening, his eyes both worried and proud. I did not have the heart to share my suspicions with him. His emotional state still seemed fragile after the divorce, and his excitement about becoming a father again gave him a renewed sense of purpose. The breaking point approached when Jessica began making not-so-subtle comments about my bedroom. It was the largest besides the master, situated at the corner of the house with windows on 2 walls offering plenty of natural light and a view of the backyard. "That room would make such a perfect nursery," she sighed while Dad and I watched a baseball game. "All that beautiful morning light would be so soothing for a baby." Dad glanced at me uncertainly but said nothing. 2 days later, Mrs. Reynolds, our 70-year-old neighbor who had been friends with my mother, stopped me as I collected the mail. "Broderick, I do not mean to cause trouble," she said in a hushed tone, "but I thought you should know. That young lady your father is with. I have seen her meeting a man at the park 3 blocks over. Quite cozy they were, and not in a way that seemed like just friends." I thanked her for the information, my suspicions growing stronger. Still, what proof did I have, beyond an elderly neighbor's observations, and how could I tell Dad, without seeming like I was trying to sabotage his happiness out of resentment? The thought of him experiencing another betrayal so soon after his divorce made me hesitate. That hesitation was my second mistake. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning. Dad had left for work at 6 and I was pouring my second cup of coffee when Jessica cornered me in the kitchen, her prenatal vitamin in one hand and a determined look on her face. "We need to talk about your room," she stated without preamble. I took a deliberate sip of coffee. "What about my room? I need it for the nursery. It is the biggest bedroom besides the master has the best light, and you do not really need all that space." She said this as if announcing a decision already made. "You can move your things to the small guest room this weekend." I nearly choked. "Excuse me, it is not a big deal," she continued, waving her hand dismissively. "The guest room is plenty big for just you. We need to start preparing for the baby. I want to paint and set up furniture soon. Jessica, that has been my room since I was 10 years old. I am not moving out of it." Her expression hardened, all pretense of reasonableness vanishing. "This is about family, Broderick. A baby is coming. Are you really going to be selfish about a room when your little brother or sister needs it?" Half-sibling, I corrected automatically, which only angered her more. "I always knew you resented me," she snapped. "You have been difficult from day one. Thomas said you would be understanding about the baby, but clearly you only care about yourself." The argument escalated until she stormed out, slamming the front door. I sat at the kitchen table, stunned by the entitlement she had displayed. But the worst was yet to come. That evening, Jessica was in tears when Dad arrived home. She had spun a completely different version of our morning conversation, painting herself as the reasonable, expectant mother who had gently broached the subject of nursery space, only to be cruelly shut down. Dad pulled me into the garage to talk privately. "Son, I know this is a lot of change." All at once he began, looking torn. "But could you not make this small sacrifice? We are family. That baby is going to be your sibling." I could not believe what I was hearing. "Dad," she demanded, I give up my room with zero discussion. "This is my house too." A flash of something crossed his face. "Guilt, annoyance. Jessica is carrying my child, Broderick. We need to make accommodations. The guest room is perfectly fine, so you are taking her side without even hearing me out." He sighed heavily. "I am not taking sides. I am just asking you to be flexible for me." That night, unable to sleep, I went to my office to catch up on work. Passing the hallway bathroom, I heard Jessica on the phone again, her voice low but clear. "He is being difficult about the room, but Thomas will get him in line. Yes, I know the timeline is tight, but once the baby comes, no one will question anything. Just make sure the paperwork goes through before then." "What paperwork?" The cryptic conversation left me uneasy enough that I checked my bedroom the next morning before leaving for a coffee shop work session. To my shock, I found evidence that someone had been through my desk drawers. The folders containing my financial documents were slightly out of order, including the property records for the house. That afternoon, I installed a new lock on my bedroom door. The simple action sparked World War III. Jessica discovered it when she tried to enter my room while I was on a video call with clients. Her shriek of outrage was loud enough that I had to apologize and reschedule the meeting. The fight that followed when Dad got home was explosive. "He does not trust me in his space. He thinks I am going to steal something," Jessica cried dramatically. "What kind of family locks each other out?" Dad looked at me with disappointment. "Why would you do something like that, Broderick?" When I explained finding my documents disturbed, Jessica denied everything, suggesting I was paranoid and possibly resentful of her pregnancy. The gaslighting was so effective that even I began questioning my certainty. The situation reached its breaking point the following week. I came home from a rare evening out with friends to find Dad and Jessica waiting in the living room, their expressions grim. "We need to talk," son, Dad began, not quite meeting my eyes. Jessica cut in before he could continue. "This living arrangement is not working anymore. I cannot handle the stress during my pregnancy. It is not healthy for the baby." I waited, sensing what was coming. Jessica thinks. Dad paused, then corrected himself. "We think it would be best if you found your own place." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "You want me to move out of my own home, just temporarily," Dad hurried to add, "until we get settled with the baby, maybe a year." Jessica sat there with a barely concealed look of triumph. "The guest room is too small to convert to a nursery. We need your space, and frankly, the tension you are creating is not good for my pregnancy." The tension I am creating, I could not believe what I was hearing. Dad looked pained but resolute. "Jessica has been emotional lately because of the hormones. The doctor said stress is bad for the baby. Please, Broderick, I am asking you as your father. It is either me and your grandchild or him, Thomas, Jessica stated coldly, dropping her victim act entirely. I cannot live like this anymore. I left without another word, driving to my friend Marcus's apartment. The hurt and anger were overwhelming. How could Dad choose this woman? He barely knew over his own son. How could he ask me to leave the home my mother had left to me? That question stopped my mental spiral. The home my mother had left to me. You need to check the property records, Marcus advised after hearing the full story. If the house is legally yours, they cannot kick you out. The next morning I went to the county records office. By afternoon I returned home with a folder of official documents. I found Jessica in my bedroom, smugly sorting through my possessions, deciding what would be relocated to make room for baby furniture. Your dad told you to leave, so leave, she said, without looking up when I entered. We need this room for the baby. I placed the folder on the bed beside her. Lady, I own this house. It has been in my name since Mom died. The shock on her face was almost worth all the drama. She recovered quickly, though her expression hardening. Thomas said, I do not care what my dad told you. This house legally belongs to me. The deed, mortgage, and tax records all confirm it. I pointed to the documents. So no, I will not be moving out. But you are welcome to find somewhere else to live. She bolted from the room, phone in hand. I could hear her frantically calling Dad, demanding he come home immediately. When he arrived 30 minutes later, Jessica was in full meltdown mode, claiming I had threatened her and the baby. He came at me aggressively, she sobbed. I do not feel safe here. Dad looked bewildered, shifting his gaze between us. Broderick, what is going on? I silently handed him the property records. The house is mine, Dad. Mom left it to me, remember? We signed the paperwork after the funeral. Recognition and shame crossed his face as he looked at the documents. I had forgotten it was officially transferred, he admitted quietly. That is not all. I continued, pulling out my phone to show him photos of my disturbed financial documents. Jessica has been going through my personal papers, and Mrs. Reynolds sent me these. I scrolled to texts from our neighbor showing photos of Jessica meeting a man at the park, caught in an intimate embrace that left no doubt about their relationship. Dad stared at the evidence, the color draining from his face. She is lying to you, Dad, about everything. Jessica switched tactics, instantly going from tearful victim to furious accuser. You are spying on me, having people follow me. My friend Troy was just comforting me after a difficult doctor's appointment, Troy, Dad asked quietly. You told me you went to those appointments alone. Her mask slipped completely, then her face contorting with rage. This is ridiculous. I am not going to stand here and be accused by your loser son, who cannot even move out and get his own life. This was supposed to be our fresh start. What about the paperwork you mentioned on the phone? I asked. The documents that need to go through before the baby comes. Her eyes widened slightly before narrowing. I do not know what you are talking about. Jessica, Dad said, his voice strained. Is this baby even mine? The question hung in the air for one tense moment before she exploded, grabbing her purse and heading for the door. I am not dealing with this insanity. When you are ready to apologize, Thomas, call me. Otherwise, talk to my lawyer. The door slammed behind her, leaving Dad and me in stunned silence. The aftermath of Jessica's dramatic exit left a heavy silence in our home. For 3 days, Dad barely spoke, moving through the house like a ghost, checking his phone constantly. Jessica had cleared out her essential belongings while we were both at work, leaving behind only her yoga mats and some kitchen gadgets, as if keeping a foothold in our space. Her parting text message to Dad threatened legal action for emotional distress and prenatal support, but after that initial blast, nothing followed. No lawyer's letter, no formal demands, just silence that gradually revealed the truth of her deception. I struggled with my own emotional fallout. Anger that Dad had chosen her over me still burned bright, but watching him shuffle around with haunted eyes, I found my resentment giving way to something else. Compassion. The man had endured so much loss, his wife of 30 years to cancer, then the painful divorce from my stepmother Elaine, and now this betrayal. In his vulnerability, Jessica had found the perfect target. I am sorry, he finally said over coffee one morning, his voice rough from disuse. I should have trusted you. Should have seen through her. I nodded, not quite ready to absolve him completely, but recognizing his genuine remorse. She was never pregnant, was she? He asked, staring into his mug. We will probably never know for certain, I answered honestly. But considering she never produced any medical records and disappeared once questioned, I doubt it. Dad visibly flinched. 2 weeks later, our suspicions were confirmed when Mrs. Reynolds spotted Jessica at a different park with the same man, her supposedly pregnant belly suddenly flat again. The paternity test Dad had insisted on became unnecessary. She wanted the house, I realized aloud, when Dad showed me the text thread where Jessica had asked detailed questions about our property value and mortgage status. The pregnancy story was to secure her position. Once the baby came, she would have pushed to put her name on the deed as your wife and mother of your child. Dad nodded wearily. I was so desperate not to be alone that I ignored every red flag. And worse, I betrayed my own son in the process. The path to rebuilding our relationship was not smooth or quick. Trust once broken does not simply snap back into place. We started with small steps. Dad formally acknowledged my ownership of the house with a proper rental agreement. The paperwork seemed cold, but it established clear boundaries that we both needed. More importantly, we began having honest conversations about grief, about Mom, about how her absence had left both of us adrift in different ways. Dad admitted that Jessica had initially reminded him of Mom in small, probably calculated ways. The same shampoo scent, similar phrases, small mannerisms that created an unconscious emotional connection. I was trying to fill a hole that cannot be filled, he confessed during one of our talks. Instead of processing my grief, I tried to replace what I had lost. For my part, I acknowledged how passive I had been, allowing problems to escalate, rather than addressing them directly out of fear of hurting Dad further. We both need to be better about honesty, I told him, even when the truth is uncomfortable. 6 months after Jessica's exit from our lives, real healing had begun to take root. Dad started seeing a grief counselor. He reconnected with old friends who had been pushed aside during his relationship with Jessica. He even began dating again, though with appropriate caution and at a reasonable pace. Margaret, a kind bookstore owner closer to his age, occasionally joined us for dinner, bringing warmth without any hint of manipulation. The experience changed me too. I became more assertive in all my relationships, recognizing that setting boundaries is not selfish but necessary. I started volunteering at a financial literacy program, helping people understand property rights and documentation. My experience with Jessica had shown me how vulnerable people can be when they do not understand what they own and what rights they have. Dad and I established new house rules. Shared spaces remained shared with decisions made together. Private spaces were respected. Any future potential partners would be welcomed as guests first, with major changes to living arrangements requiring proper discussion and agreement. The room that Jessica had coveted remained mine, though I helped Dad convert part of the garage into a proper home office so he could start a small consulting business in his industry. The project gave us something positive to build together, healing the rift through collaborative effort. Looking back now, I realize how easily family bonds can be manipulated by those who recognize vulnerability. Love and loyalty make us want to accommodate, to sacrifice, to overlook red flags in the name of keeping peace. But true family supports your boundaries rather than demanding you abandon them. I still have the folder of property documents in my desk drawer. Not out of paranoia, but as a reminder that sometimes standing your ground is the most important thing you can do, even against those you love. That documentation and clarity prevent manipulation. That ownership means responsibility, not just to a physical space, but to the boundaries that keep relationships healthy. Dad and I sit on the back patio now, planning our next home improvement project, our relationship stronger for having weathered the storm. The house that Jessica coveted has become a true home again, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone who tried to take what was rightfully yours? Share your story in the comments below. Did this video resonate with your own experiences with entitled people or family conflicts? Hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about maintaining boundaries. Remember, sometimes the most important thing you can say is not just no, but this is mine. Thanks for listening, and may you always know what you own and have the strength to protect it.